What is up, humans of the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are talking about Super Polymerization. This is one of my favorite cards because for as amazing as it is and as powerful as everybody acknowledges this card is, not a lot of decks can afford to play it, and there's also a lot of formats where it's really not worth playing. So today I want to go through a lot of the I don't know, I guess newish, I guess all of them. Like, we're gonna going through like a lot of the like super poly targets that exist in the game, because they may not be perfect now, but a lot of them are just ones you need to keep in mind. And I mean, if you're a big fan of decks that can afford to play something like super poly, it's one of those things where you're like, maybe I should just have these cards also for when the time comes and they are ready to be like amazing. So let's just jump into it. We've got a ton of stuff. If you don't know what Super Poly does, it's discard one card as cost, and then you fusion summon a fusion monster from your deck using monsters from either field as fusion material. So you can fuse off using your opponent's monsters. So as long as you have something generic or works with what your opponent is playing, then this card can hit them, and being a quick play is like so insane with that. And obviously the big thing is neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation, so your opponent cannot respond. So that's why this card is so good at like breaking boards, is even if they have a whole board of negates, boom, just clear the board with Super Poly. Very, very powerful. So let's get into this thing. Let's start looking at some of the options here. Most of the first ones of the generic ones are like in alphabetical order, so no particular order here. But first of the dragons is an interesting one. I get it. Normal monsters aren't great in Yu-Gi-Oh, but there can actually be some specific matchups where like this card is actually really, really strong. So just keep an eye on it. Also, like, it's unaffected by monster effects and can't be destroyed by battle with monsters. So that's kind of funny. Like, it can be annoying for certain decks to out if they don't have a lot of spell and trap removal access. Next up, we have Borreload Furious Dragon. So this one goes with just like, I don't know, look at Dragon, like how long it's been around. Look at how we like almost always feel like there's like a good Dragon deck in the format. Well, this takes any two dark dragons, and dark obviously being the most popular attribute. And this is a disruption. He can target a monster you control and a card your opponent controls, destroy them both. And he also has a follow-up ability in Graveyard. Like, this card is really, really strong legitimately, because when it comes to Super Poly, there's really only two factors you're looking for. You're like, one, is it generically easy to make? Like, how easy is it for my opponent to establish the materials for me to hit them with this card? And two, how much value does that card offer you once it hits the field? Because there are some Super Poly targets that are essentially vanillas once they hit the field. They don't really do anything for you. But this guy is disruption. He gives you follow-up link material, engrave. He really is like a powerful card. And if he's good, I highly recommend you throw him in there. Moving on, we have Brotherhood, the Fire Fist Swan. So this card's not the craziest, because like you're probably not going to take advantage of his on-field effect. No, you're probably not take advantage of either of his on-field effects, but he does take any two Beast Warriors generically, so cool. Like, we'll take it for sure. But that's pretty much it. Kind of same thing with the Plexur Chimera. He's probably not using his like on-field effects. I mean, he can tribute himself to make spell and trap cards and their effects unactivatable during the battle phase, which I guess could come up in a very specific scenario, but mainly just the fact that he takes two Cyberus monsters, very, very generic. He's a little smaller too, but he does cover his bases being generic. Next up, we have Draco Necronether Soul Dragon. This is the zombie version. Takes any two zombies. He does like have the ability to like give yourself some extra like big tokens based on like monsters that he's battling, which is pretty cool. So he does give you like extra material on board, but he doesn't exactly help you push for games. Sometimes that can be annoying, but still, particularly in like a zombie deck where you're playing Zombie World, you're making the whole field zombies. Like, it's so much easier just to make this card for free, so we'll take it. Next up, we have Earth Golem Adagnister. This one is any Cyberus monster plus a Link monster. So one Cyberus, one Link. Even Cyberus decks could take advantage of this, because as long as you're in a Link matchup, you get to clear a Link monster while making this guy, who is a Chungus. I think he gains attack when he battles something. So in the extra deck, or from the extra deck, which is pretty decent, but nothing too crazy. So he's cool. He's honestly pretty good. I think in some matchups, some situations, he's going to just be better than Plexur, like straight up. Next up here, we move the Fossil Warrior Skull King. This guy's pretty cool because he takes any rock monster plus a level 7 or higher monster. Now, I didn't put the rest of the fossil fusions on here, but they all are somewhat generic like that. They're usually like one rock monster plus some level of monster, higher or lower than a certain level. And that makes them pretty generic because if you're playing a rock deck, or if something like Adamantipator works its way back into the format, those super poly targets become legit because you're able to clear stuff like Dragite or Raptite while also clearing another level 7 or higher monster on the way of making this. So you could literally with super poly clear like a Borreload Savage and a Dragite on the way of making Skull King, who's a 2000 beater. He has the ability to inflict extra damage, and he's also like a graveyard disruption, I believe. Yeah, he can like quick reborn a monster from your opponent's graveyard to your field. So help you push for more damage, help you, disrupt their graveyard at the same time. He's actually a pretty good card. And so are some of the other ones, because they also offer some value in grave. Some of them are just like, while they're in grave, banish them to pop a card. Like, they get some value even after you've made them. So definitely something to keep in mind. Very generic there. Moving next, we have Guilty Gearfried, the Magical Steel Knight. He's pretty cool. He takes any 2 warriors with different attributes. I'll definitely keep an eye on this one. Just because, like, I think about warrior deck, I think about Infernobles, and I know they're mainly ending on warriors that are all fire attribute, which does make it a little awkward. But especially if you're going first, you can let them like resolve Isolde for a tuner, and that tuner is obviously going to be a warrior, and then you can super poly them almost every time because Isolde is light, whereas most of the rest of their deck is fire. So you can make this guy, if he's ever targeted, he can like negate the effect and destroy a card on the field, which is pretty cool. And he also has like the ability to like attack multiple times depending on how you used him or how you made him, which is really cool. He's actually a pretty good card. We'll see him come up later, I'm sure. Same thing with Edaten. This card's kind of crazy as well. He takes any 2 level 5 or higher warrior monsters. Now that breaks usually Infernoble board if they're ending on Gearfried as well as Charles. And also when this card's fusion summon, you just add a level 5 warrior from deck to hand, so that's actually kind of insane too. And then he has ways to deal extra damage and do all this stuff. So he's cool. He'll definitely come up, I think, at some point in the future. Mud Dragon the Swamp. This one's a little more generic because it takes any 2 monsters with the same attribute but different types. So I think about I don't know, what's a good example of that? Now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, oh, well, how does that even work? It really does come up. It's just hard thing. I guess like Madolche is a good one. They're all earth, but like some of them are beasts, some of them are warriors, some of them are fairies, right? So this kind of hits them pretty well. He can quick effect change his attribute and make monsters with his attribute untargetable. So he gives you a little bit of protection, but mainly he's just there because he's super, super generic. Then you have Mysterion, the Dragon Crown. This is actually a new one as well. It takes any spellcaster and a dragon. Okay, that's not bad. I think those types can be pretty generally used as far as like extra deck monsters go. So some boards may just try to end on this period. But let's see. If a monster uses to activate effect to special summon itself, or a monster with its same original type, you can target one of those special summon monsters and banish that monster. Also banish all monsters on the field with its same original type. So kind of a weird interruption effect. It's kind of specific, but it is still a 3k beater, and it easily could come up, like, because Spellcaster and Dragon end up being very popular, like just generic good extra deck monster types. We could easily see those on the same board for sure. Now we move to some Predaplant stuff. We have Drago Stapelia. This one's really cool because it takes any fusion plus a dark. That's very, very generic. And the other thing is he's essentially like a walking impermanence once per turn, which is really, really good. You get really solid value even after you've cleared your opponent's stuff. Like versus Invoked, this is a really good card because you clear their like a Makaba plus a Winda or whatever their board is. And then you just have an impermanence. So even though they did the Invoked play, they added Alistair back, you already have an impermanence to negate that Alistair no matter what after beating their board. Really, really cool. Trifia Veritum, same thing. He is super generic. Any 3 darks on the field, you can make him. And he just negates a summon from the extra deck once per turn, which is very, very good. A Link summon, an Exceed summon, a Synchro summon. Can't stop a Fusion summon if it's happening with a spell, but it is what it is. Disruption is disruption while clearing 3 monsters off the field. Hell yes. Chalice Guard, Dragon Duke. This is a card that people have theorized at points. I still think he could come up depending on if there are like specific decks in the metagame, but any 3-link monsters. That's it. If a deck is like link based and there's a link based combo deck and they're trying to end on a bunch of big links, like this card is super polyum for this, and the game's just over for sure. Starting event Infusion, I don't need to say anything about this. 2 dark monsters, just super generic, most popular type in the game. It's easier to make than Trivial Veritum, but Trivial Veritum is like a really high ceiling. You get a disruption out of it, and you clear 3 bodies instead of 2 at the same time. Then you have this guy. This guy's also new from this year. He's much more specific than a lot of the cards we've read so far. He takes a Synchro, an Exceed, and a Link. But man, when he's on the field, he feels so strong because he can pay multiples of 2,000 life points to resolve multiple different effects in the same turn. So if you pay 2,000, you can if you pay 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, you can resolve any number of these that you want. You can either add any spell or trap from grave back to hand. That's insane. You can destroy 3 cards your opponent controls. That doesn't target. That's insane. And the other one is like this one gains attack equal to half of the difference between your life and your opponent's life. But no other monsters can attack. So I guess that could come up if you just like are in a situation where you think you're just going to pay life points and then kill your opponent in one shot. I could see that happening for sure. But for the most part, the first 2 effects are like really, really strong. So it's high payoff, but a little bit harder to make. But who knows? When we just have a deck come along where its standard board is end on a Borreload Savage, a Abyss Dweller, and an Appaloosa. Boom. Hit them for this, and the game is just over. For sure. And the last card I think we have here for the generic stuff is Monster of Theseus. I don't think this card is too crazy. It takes 2 tuners, so it is pretty generic, but when you really think about it, like what decks are ending on 2 tuners? Because Super Poly is mainly coming up as your opponent has ended their turn, you need to play into their board, and Super Poly is supposed to be there for you to help clear their board away so you can attempt to play. It can come up as a disruption, and as a disruption, I could see it coming up more for Theseus, but like going first if you set it, because it is a quick play. But I think for the most part, like you're going to be hard pressed to find 2 tuners on the field at the same time, aside from like a very specific deck. So still cool though. Then we move to some archetypal stuff, and this isn't stuff that's like particularly amazing right now, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out. The first off, I'm going to throw Titanic Light here, but you could also look at something like Sprint, the Iron Dash Dragon, and the Branded Dragon, and like the other ones, the Albaz targets, because unfortunately they do say specifically Albaz instead of like, oh, a Dogmatica card, so helps you clear Dogmaticas generically. But listen, the second material is generic, and the other thing to keep in mind is the OCG is getting an Albaz structure deck. If they really try to build a really good archetype around Albaz, then Super Poly could just be generically incredible because it just like beats Albaz, which is really good. So just keep that in mind. I think these will just be targets that if that becomes like a legitimately great deck, that'll be something to keep in mind. Next up, Destiny Heroes, specifically Phoenix Enforcer. If heroes become a legit meta threat post Burst of Destiny, because this card's great generically, but it's better in Heroes because you're already playing the bricks that you'd otherwise be playing in that deck. But here's the thing. Their main board is going to be pass on Phoenix Enforcer plus Darklaw. That's going to be their bread and butter, I assume. And that's really strong, but not in the face of Super Poly. If you hit them for Super Poly, this guy takes a level 6 or higher hero and a Destiny hero monster. You can clear a Phoenix Enforcer and a Darklaw without giving Darklaw a discard, without giving Darklaw, like he banishes your discard cost, but whatever. And Phoenix Enforcer won't trigger because he only comes back if he was destroyed. So you clear both of their threats on the field and make your own Phoenix Enforcer out of it. And now you have a Phoenix Enforcer. Like the payoff for that is like so insane. I'm definitely going to be keeping that in mind, of just having a Phoenix Enforcer in the deck that I'm playing Super Poly in, just so you have a free win versus Destiny Heroes, essentially, if you draw Super Poly. Next up is Winda. I don't need to explain this too much. Another should-all matchup. I get it. Their monsters will float, but at least if you can make a Winda, like, their deck can kind of be annoyed at the prospect of Winda as well, depending on their situation. So we'll take it. We'll take it, especially if it's a deck that plays like a Dogmatica Invoked variant that just plays a very small should-all package, because it's a little harder for stuff like Invoked and Dogmatica to beat a Winda than it is for like should-alls too. Should-alls can handle their own Windas. I think they're pretty decent at that. Invoked as well is another one. Like if you can just hit the Alistair with another light on field like you can get them. Right, or like the idea, I guess, would be if like they made Makaba turn 1, they got around to their next turn, and they went normal summon Alistair to like search, and on that you could super poly the Alistair and the Makaba away for your own Makaba, so you can negate the invocation if you had a spell in hand, and make a disruption out of it while clearing the bodies off the field right there. It could come up. They have the other invoked monsters as well, so keep those in mind. But for the most part, I would expect that to be it. Algoides could actually be a decent one as well if your opponent tries to get greedy and continue to play. I could see that being decent. Eldritch, the Mad Golden Lord. This card just kills Eldritch. Like, Eldritch just loses to this card. The engine of Eldritch cannot beat this card because you're taking the Golden Lord off the field and one of the golden lands once they summon it, and then this guy can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. And he's 3,800. So I think Eldritch just like doesn't have an out to this. If they're playing another engine, maybe that engine has another out. But like outside of that, like this card just beats that deck. It's crazy. Despie, Quaritus, but there's other fusions too. I just think this is important to keep in mind. I still think Despie is a solid engine. I think at some point we'll see it come in clutch in certain decks, and they'll be ending on a Despian monster maybe. And if they are, it's just nice to have access to these because you can just beat their boards with something like Super Poly. So yeah, just keeping in mind like where the future meta might go. Salamangreat, Violet Chimera. You could obviously do Plexur Chimera that deck, or Earth Golem at Ignister that deck, but I do think like overall Violet Chimera is probably just higher ceiling in that matchup specifically. It helps you with DK a little harder. It's bigger, harder to out for them than the Plexur is. So you know, Violet Chimera is fine. Then we have Prankid's Weather Washer. I think this is the last one on here. And yeah, I believe super polying regular like main deck Prankids still gets them the trigger. But I think if you could hit them in a weird spot, like if they make the link 1, like if you're going first and like you have this set, if they make the link 1 and summon a monster from one of the Prankids from deck and you super poly them there, they will get another summon off of the new Prankid they summoned. But unless they have their own fusion and another Prankid in hand, they shouldn't be able to extend from there. Or they need an extender like Monster Reborn, 1-for-1. So you got to put them on not having any of those in hand. But you can definitely hit them in a really awkward spot, especially since what makes Prankids tough is if they like get into their like some of their links and fusions, they have like quick effect tag out ability to dodge stuff that generally is like quick effect removal. But because Super Poly can't be responded to, that takes that factor out of that and actually can be a pretty decent card versus them. So I don't hate it. I really don't. And yeah, also like they can, yeah, it's just decent. It really is. So yeah, I think it's good. And then it gives you a beater that doesn't give them the ability to do stuff in the damage, until the end of the damage step, which is cool. Give them a taste of their own medicine, and it's solid. And obviously Prankids seem good now. I don't know what we'll see ban list wise for them, but you know, if they're still good in the future, this is definitely a card to consider. So I like that we're getting more and more generic cards for Super Poly because so many decks just can't even afford to play it. I know people say like Super Poly is so stupid, they're making so many targets, you can hit any deck with Super Poly. I was like, okay, but like how many decks want to play Super Poly? Like you look at the best decks in the game and like they have these tight extra decks where they just like are not even going to be willing to do that. Maybe as a side deck option they could look at it and like side out a couple of useless cards in the extra deck for like Super Poly targets, but like even that is like seems kind of bad. Like you're losing extra or side deck slots because of extra like Super Poly targets. It's just not good. So like those rogue decks that really need something like Super Poly to be able to compete with the meta, I like that we're getting more and more targets for those cards. I think it's really, really nice. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's most of the targets that I think are important. I'm sure there's other ones out there. I scanned through a lot of fusion monsters. Some of them were just like too specific or not likely. Like there was one that required like a pyro and a machine. Like machines are pretty popular, but like when was the last time we saw anything pyro be relevant? So I was like, okay, technically that is generic, but something like Mysterion being dragon and spellcaster, I'm like, that could come up. I don't really see pyro machine coming up as much, but we'll see. You never know what Konami wants to make good, you know, a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. Who freaking knows? But let me know down below if there's any fusions down below that you think we missed. And also let me know where you think Super Poly is. What if you like playing Super Poly? What decks is your favorite deck to play Super Poly in? Just let me know your thoughts down below. I love hearing your comments down there. But I'm gonna get the hell out of here. Thank you so much for watching as always. I will see you in the next video. Peace.